January. My name is Julia. On behalf of the skipper Toby and the whole of the January crew, we're very pleased to have you with us. Just to let you know that we are going to go into a lock. It's the only lock we will go through. And whilst we're going through the lock, it's important that you keep your arms and elbows and any other bodily parts inside the boat. Alright, children on board, precious little beings, mums and nans, whoever are looking after children, just keep an eye out. We don't want anyone overboard. Right, what is danger? Thanks for that, Tony. And also we have lifebelts on the roof of the Jenny and fire extinguishers below the stairs here in a very unlikely event that we are going to need them. Okay, so as I said, my name's Julia and I'm going to be sharing with you some information about the canal and the surrounding area. So I will do the commentary all the way from here, some 2.5 miles to Little Venice, which was one of the last canals to be built in this area. It's just under 9 miles long, and it has 12 pairs of locks, of which we are going to go through one of them. Now this is the only surviving operational pair of locks, and once the gate is closed behind us, the lock chamber will flood with water, about 58,000 gallons, or 240,000 litres. Now this is in order to lift us up. We need to be level with the water on the other side of the gate in front of us. So this was a man-made system, the canal system, was designed to negotiate those varying levels in line. So in order to travel backwards, that far away, eastwards, the land level drops some 95 feet. So there are another 11 pairs of blocks going that way. Alright? But we're only going through this one, we're travelling westwards to Little Venice. Okay? So a bit of detail about the locks. They're 78 feet long, 14.5 feet wide. They were built originally to take the big, heavy, flat-bottomed transport boats, which would have filled this. But we can actually get 2 boats this size of the lock. The lock gates are made of English oak. They weigh about 4 tons each, so it's the same as a baby Asian elephant in size. In the building, there is a world-renowned music venue, live music venue. And when it was set up in the early 70s, the likes of Etta James performed there. In the 21st century, we've had Coldplay, Foo Fighters, and Red Hot Chili Peppers all performed at Dingwall. Next to Dingwall is the market. It's the Stables Market part of Camden Market. And it's called the Stables Market because the stalls, a lot of the stalls are actually situated inside the old stable buildings. Now it's going westwards to Little Venice, some 2.5 miles. Just about to pass the wharf where the Stables Market is, and you'll see these beautiful old buildings that have been preserved. Going under the crossover bridge, the turnover bridge. The horses would have been led back down on the slope there on the other side. If you look up, you'll see a red brick building on your right hand side. This is the interchange warehouse. And this is where canal system met railway system. So the canal boats would sail into this tunnel and exchange goods with the railway system through a trapdoor in the platform. But have a look, because this tunnel was used in the making of Spectre, the 24th James Bond film. Daniel Craig hung around here for quite a few weeks before my time, sadly. Yeah, I know. And he and Rory Kinnear were filmed coming out on a speeding boat. It was meant to be under the MI5 building, but actually it was here at Camden Lock. Right, so on our left we have the maritime looking building. This is Gilby's warehouse. This was used by the Gilby brothers in the 1800s, and they ran an import-export business for wines from here. But they also got into making good gin. Gilby's gin, no doubt you've heard of it. And Camden became world-renowned for its distillation, production and transportation of gin. Coming now to Gilby's Wharf, on the left-hand side you'll see now that this is the home of Pirate Castle. And the Pirate Castle was established in 1966 as part of a deal with the Electricity Generating Board, because they wanted to put cables under a tow path. So the local council said, okay, you can do that, but can we have a really nice community centre for our local people? And it's still going strong today, and as you can see, you can learn all sorts of water sports like paddleboarding and kayaking and canoeing. Instilled it was vital that it had good transport links. So later, not straight away, but after the canal system was put in place, the railway system became a very busy and flexible part of that system. So now we're going to go past some wonderful, beautiful examples of the best of London real estate. Now the houses that you're going to go past on our left here are Regency style, so they're coming up for a couple of 100 years old, 4 and 5 stories. They all have their own landing stages, and in some cases they have their own boats. We're talking multi-millions of pounds of the houses here. The one that we passed that's pink was featured in the Grand Designs programme, for those of you who know that. And I'm hoping that a very familiar friend of ours is going to be up on the balcony. It wasn't last week, because no, it's all been. There is a cow actually, not a real one, a model of a life-size cow on the balcony of this house here, but they're doing some work on the balcony. But talking of balconies, look at the beautiful ornate wrought iron embellishments. Now in the days that these houses were built, wrought iron was a status symbol, so the more you had and the more beautiful it was, the more you were deemed to be important and wealthy. You'll see St Mark's Church. Now on the 20th of September 1940, St Mark's was hit by an incendiary bomb in the Second World War, which really did some damage, but then 5 days later was hit again by a high explosive bomb which completely destroyed it. They weren't to be beaten though. They've spent the following 17 years rebuilding it in exactly the same way, and with the addition of a beautiful stained glass window which depicts some of the animals from London Zoo, which is very close by. We're going to take a sharp right now, but I want you to look to your left because you'll see a floating Chinese restaurant, which is the Fei Shang Princess. This is said to be a favourite restaurant with Sir Paul McCartney. And we're now officially in Regent's Park. Now Regent's Park covers an area of about 400 acres, and in Tudor times it was the personal hunting ground of King Henry VIII. So it would have been stocked with all sorts of game and birds and wild boar and deer for his pleasure. Some beautiful examples of some boats coming up on the left. To permanently moor your boats on this part of Regent's Canal, you would have to pay £30,000 a year just for the mooring licence. It's a very expensive, well, London's expensive, right, so it's not surprising. was the person responsible for designing the Regent's Canal. And at the request of the Prince Regent, the husband of Queen Victoria, and he wanted to put it right through the centre of Regent's Park, but he met with so many complaints from the local residents, he had to reroute it to the northern edge of Regent's Park, which is where we are now. And you'll see just ahead of us, we are just about to go through part of London Zoo, which takes up about 40 acres of Regent's Park. Now the netted structure that you can see ahead of us is the iconic Snowden Aviary. It's been part of London landscape since the 60s, and it was partly designed by Anthony Armstrong Jones, who later became the husband of Princess Margaret and then became Lord Snowden. Whoa! Thanks for that. So nowadays it's not what it started out being. It was the first walk-in aviary of its kind in the world. It's now the home of a troop of colobus monkeys. So I'm hoping that they're going to be out to entertain you. On the left you'll see African hunting dogs, hopefully, and that's what they look like on the blue poster there. They're called painted dogs because they look like someone's taken a paintbrush to them and daubed them with black paint. So they'll be on the left, hopefully, the colobus monkeys on the right. Now it is lunchtime, so they may well be feeding and sleeping off that lunch. But look out for them, they're black and white, they've got long fur and long tails. And all the apparatus that has been put in, and the netting has all been specifically put in for the monkeys. So it has changed, and the waterfall as well. Now that's a model of one on the railing there, you see, that's what they look like. I'm hoping that you'll get to see them on the way back there, being as though they look right now. The early part of the 1800s as a centre for scientific study of animals, and today it still enjoys a very good reputation for its work with preservation, conservation of endangered species. The towpath here would have been used to exercise the elephants, because the public weren't allowed on the towpath in the days when the canal was used to transport goods. But the elephants were allowed to exercise here. Every year in January, the staff of London Zoo undertake a stock check. With their clipboards and pens in hand, they count every animal, so every mammal, every bird, every reptile, and interestingly every insect. And the last figures that I have showed that there were 19,035 different animals in London Zoo, incorporating 440 species. So a very wide, diverse range housed at London Zoo. And the record for the longest living resident goes to Josephine. Now she was an Indian hornbilled bird, and when she died in 1998, she was 53 years of age, and as far as I know, she still holds the record for that longest living resident. A bridge. This is the Macclesfield Bridge, named after Lord Macclesfield, who was one of the first chairmen of the board of the canal companies in its day. They're also known as the blowup bridge. Now the reason for this is that in 1874, a barge called the Tilbury was passing directly underneath this bridge. It had a cargo of explosives and benzol. Now it is thought that one of the three crew members must have lit a match to light his pipe, and of course blew up the whole boat with its cargo on board and taking the bridge with it. Now the explosion was said to be heard right across London, even the Houses of Parliament. It was destroyed with the exception of the big black wrought iron pillars that you can see supporting the bridge on both sides. But have a look at the first and the last one on the right hand side, and you will see the small marks from the ropes where the horses pulled the boats. Now they were put on the wrong way round because of course we wouldn't be able to see those, they should be on the other side. So those are the only original parts of the Macclesfield Bridge. Needless to say, an Act of Parliament was passed in 1875 prohibiting the transport of anything explosive on the canal system.
Hello, trainer.
Skipper sounds his horn sometimes just to alert people. Now these are hire boats, so they're not always the most proficient sailors. We pass on the right on the canal in this country, and though we drive on the left on the canal, and the waterways we pass on the right. So as I was saying about the canal system being designed for the transportation of goods, and it was ironically the railway system that proved to be the demise of the canal system because it was more flexible, cheaper and faster. The canal system fell into disrepair because it was no longer used. It became a bit of a rubbish dump. And the government of the day, the early part of the 20th century, wanted to fill them all in with concrete, make them into roads. Happily, there were a group of like-minded volunteers who decided that no, it had potential. So they began a big clean-up. And it's thanks to them starting that we have the canal system we have today. We enjoy it for leisure. And it's busier today than it ever was, even at the height of the Industrial Revolution. See people walking, running, cycling along the towpath, lots of leisure boats on the water. On our right now is the second largest private garden in London after Buckingham Palace. You'll see the private property signs. This garden is long and narrow. It follows the path of the canal for quite some way. I'll point out the house to which this garden belongs when we come alongside. On the left we have the Nash Villas. Now the Nash Villas were a project that were dreamt up by John Nash, the architect of the Regent's Canal, and although they look old, they're not as old as they look. John Nash didn't get to realise his dream in his lifetime. A lot of these were built at the last part of last century, the early part of this century, and they're mock classic design. They all have Regent's Park addresses, and they are the Nash mansions, and there are 6 of them. It's a bit difficult to see some of them now because they're shrouded in the trees, but there are a couple right at the end that don't have the trees in front, so you'll get a good look at how beautiful they are. And you can imagine, last figures we had for sale price on one of these was 6 years ago, £120 million. Megabucks. So that garden is still continuing on this side. Team of gardeners that maintain it. They all wear heads like microphone headpieces, and the house that owns this garden is just coming up on the right, the cream-coloured villa called Grove Lodge, and it's owned by the Sultan of Oman. So if you look to your left, you'll see these beautiful Nash villas now. And if you look up to your left, you'll see the crescent moon atop the Regent's Park Mosque. See, everybody waves to you when you're on the canal. So that garden is just coming to an end now. It ends where this next bridge is. So I'm not sure how long it is, but you can appreciate in real estate terms the value of this land. He chooses to keep it as his own private garden. Lots of modern apartment blocks have sprung up alongside the Regent's Canal. You can imagine these are expensive, even though they're within one-bedroom apartments, you're looking at £1 million. So we're just about to pass under 3 bridges. Note that they're made out of steel, of iron, originally iron. Henry Russell was called Iron Henry in his day, in the 1800s, and he was responsible for the structure of lots of buildings and bridges across London. Wartime was the material of the day. Right here where it's all boarded up is the responsibility of the Canal and River Trust I mentioned earlier. They oversee the guardianship of 2,000 miles of rivers and canals, rely very heavily on voluntary workers. The clearing up the rubbish from the sides of the canal, or sadly some people still do, litter, throw things into the canal. They find supermarket trolleys and all sorts. So we're just coming into the area known as Lisson Grove. Now, Lisson Grove housing estate, social housing is up on the left. But here you'll notice that the canal widens quite significantly, and this is a very popular and desirable place to permanently moor boats. So this is home for a lot of people, and look out for the homely touches, because not so much now because the weather's not brilliant, but in the summer we have parasols and garden chairs. Some places have solar panels to supply their electricity. All sorts of lovely homely touches. The building that's beyond the pink wall, the horrible, ugly industrial building, is an electricity substation, but note how many security cameras are present. This is because they supply electricity to Buckingham Palace from here and Downing Street, which is why it enjoys such high security. Now the cables that carry that electricity are hefty, as you might imagine, and they are underneath the towpath there. It gets very hot, so cooling water is pumped up from the canal, which makes the towpath quite warm underfoot. So in the winter, when the snow and ice fall on the towpath, it doesn't last very long, as it melts, the warmth of the cables. The boats are positioned horizontally out into the centre of the canal because there's room. And the reason that this green boat is positioned the different way is because this is called a winding hole, this area, and this is for boats to turn around, so it has to be kept clear. As well as the 12 pairs of blocks on the 9 miles of the Regent's Canal, there are 3 tunnels. We're going to go through the shortest one in just a moment. The longest tunnel is in Islington, back east. But we're also going to go through another one after this one. This is the Lisson Grove tunnel. If you look above the tunnel, straddling the mouth of the tunnel is a property. Now this is called a lengthman's house. And this is where the lengthman that was employed by the canal company would have lived and worked. Now it was his job to oversee or police this length of the canal. But note how low it is. So actually too low for horses to pull the boats through. So just about where the front of the boat is now, if you look right, you'll see a slope. And this slope would have been used to take the horses up over the top of the tunnel, given a cooling drink of water, and then led back down the other side. And it was very often the job of the crew members and even the children of the families that own the boats to pull the boats through here. Now there would have been no safety rail in those days, they were quite hazardous. The water incidentally is at its deepest about 9 feet, but still hazardous. But the children that grew up on the canal were made of tough stuff. It was their livelihoods, and they were very used to the demands of life on a boat. Of the slope that would have brought those horses back down and retied to the boats, and their journey continued. But not for long, because we're approaching the second longest tunnel on the Regent's Canal, which is the Maida Hill Tunnel. Now as we approach it, you'll notice there's no towpath at all now. So no horses, no crew members, or no children I should say, can pull the boat through here. This time, the horses would have been untied, taken up the top. There weren't steps then, there would have been slopes. Sometimes, if it was at night time, the horses would have been housed in the stable buildings just here on the left. They're all boarded up now, sadly, but these were used to keep the horses overnight. Because this tunnel is some 250 yards long. It takes us about 4 minutes to go through. And this time the crew members would leg their way through. Now this entailed lying on a plank of wood that was put across the top of the boat, their heads touching in the middle and their feet off the side of the boat, and they would have pushed their feet against the wall and literally legged their way through. Now this was extremely hazardous and resulted in many fatalities. There were professional leggers which would do it for you at a fee. Tunnel. We're going to pass Prince Regent, which is a restaurant boat. This is a very wide berth boat. Just about gets through the tunnel and just about gets into a lock. So when they were building the Maida Hill, when they were digging it out, it generated a lot of spoil or rubble, and it was laid on adjacent fields here and later became the foundations of the original Lord's Cricket Ground. So for those of you on board who love their cricket, this is where it all started, the Lord's Cricket Ground. So we've emerged into the straightest part now of the Regent's Canal. This is the last part of it. Perfectly straight with moorings on both sides. We have Maida Hill on one side, Bloodfield Road on the other. And for those of you on board who know the programme Dad's Army, Arthur Lowe, who played the part of Captain Mannering, lived just alongside here on the left. A blue plaque marks the spot. We have lots of nesting birds. I'm looking in to see, which is testament to how much cleaner the canal system is today than it was. It supports a lot of wildlife And actually I can't see any chicks this week. There were lots last week. Hopefully not all eaten by the foxes, which unfortunately is what happened. We had lots of bird life at the Regent's Canal, and I will point more out to you in a little while. So this is a coot with the white flash down its head. So a very desirable part of London to live here, very expensive again. Tree-lined avenues, again, multi-millions of pounds. But I'm going to take you back to the days of the canal and the industrial past. Just in the distance you'll see the blue bridge. That is the Warwick Avenue road bridge, and that marks the end of the Regent's Canal going westwards. Just in front of it, and you'll see it better when we're close up, is the toll keeper's cottage. Now, as the name suggests, it was his job to collect the tolls or the fees from the passing canal boats according to what they were carrying. So the more exotic the goods, like silk or cocoa, the more they paid. So they soon learned to hide their exotic cargo underneath the cheaper stuff like hay and coal in order to avoid paying the increased fees. Another trick they would get up to would be to tie cloths around the hooves of the horses, pass the toll keeper's cottage in the dead of night, so as not to have to pay fees at all. You'll notice that some of these boats have Little Venice proudly displayed on their sides under the names, as we are now officially in the area known as Little Venice. Fast approaching the Warwick Avenue road bridge. For those of you who know their English literature, John Masefield, who was a poet laureate in his day, lived in the house, the Queen Villa. On the left hand side you'll see the blue plaque that marks that fact. And we can see the toll keeper's cottage much more clearly now. Now this is a listed building, which means it can't be changed. It's preserved for its history, and for me always conjures up the wonderful image of the toll keeper standing on the canal path here, taking money from the passing canal traffic. He would have lived and worked from here. It's a residence now. Not sure of its value, but you'll see it has been beautifully preserved. We're just passing under the Warwick Avenue road bridge, and this is the end of the Regent's Canal. And we enter a triangular stretch of water, and this is known as Browning's Pool, after Robert Browning, the Victorian poet and author. And it was said to be him that gave this area the name Little Venice, because he likened it to Venice in Italy, where he travelled to quite a lot for inspiration for his writing. And the island in the middle is called Browning's Island. This is a haven for bird life. You're going to see all sorts of birds here now. We'll point them out to you. But on the left, if you go look down, you'll see the Paddington arm of the Grand Union Canal. So this is where, if you wanted to go to Birmingham, we'd have to stay on this boat for another 74 hours, travel 137 miles to get to Birmingham. So the birds that we have coots and moorhens, we have Canada geese, we have Egyptian geese, and I never even knew Egyptian geese existed before I took this job. They are beautiful, and we have a lot of those. We have swans, eider's, mallards, busy nesting, rearing their young. We're going to go right round this Browning Island now to offload 4 of our passengers who are going to get off here at Little Venice. So I'll just ask you to remain seated, please, though, until the boat comes to a standstill.